Jonathan Goodman. I'm the Director of Finance. I've been here now just a little bit over 1 year. However, I also spent 2 years as your external auditor, so I've been here a total of 4 years. So this is just to go over the 2017 budget for y'all. First of all, I'd like to introduce the board to you. Bob Diller, President, Steve Smith, Harry Price, Barb Storer, she's out, Misty Keys, John Conrad, and Ralph Swift. I just want to know that these folks, along with the Financial Advisor Committee, Bruce Cox, Linda, Julie Cook, Gary Fish, John Jay, Ron Cards, and Richard Heath, worked tirelessly since, I think we started this process in July. So we've all worked together to get this done for you so you can see it today. Also, I'd like to point out some of the senior managers that we have here today. I believe Neil is busy right now. Pat Davis, who heads our administration. Bruce Evans in the back there for our sewer. I'm, of course, me. Jeff Houston for the golf. Sam, are you here? Sam McAdoo? Somewhere. Mary Jo Page. William Taylor with our Racket Center. Becky Waters, HR. And Chief Michael Williams, I think he's outside or something. All these people, you've seen 3 slides of people. All these people were very extensively involved in every step of the budget process that we did from July until now. So, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to talk about some of the guiding principles we used to put together the budget. We're going to talk about the sewer system funds, the property owners, our amenity fund, the consolidated cash flow, so look at the whole development as a whole, the debt as it stands and what we expect it to be at the end of next year, our master plan improvements that are on track for what we have planned for the next 5 years, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Again, I'd just like to reiterate what the 10-year vision statement for the club, and that is Fairfield Glade will continue to be a growing resort community and become the best value master plan community in the U.S. It's important to focus on this because this is one of the principles that we use when we develop the budget. Also, our mission statement, the Fairfield Glade Community Club will continuously improve the resort lifestyle experience while fostering and promoting a strong sense of community. Some of our guiding principles were, one is to improve the infrastructure. As we all know, some of the infrastructure is aging. We've already gone leaps and bounds to remedy most of that, but we still have to work on roads, walking trails, and upgrading the sewer system, and overall the general appearance of Fairfield Glade. We continued to do the recommended maintenance program per the Upland Design Report. This report was done in 2012, I believe, or 13, and it looked at all our facilities and the recommended cost and maintenance to those. We're continuing our master plan for facility improvements. We just listed a couple that are the ones upcoming or the ones currently going on. The pickleball courts, bunkers, the covered rear porch at Stonehenge, and the new public safety fire department administration building, as well as the planning for the new bandstand at Mirror Lake. And lastly, to keep our dues and fees reasonable. This is last, but really it was the #1 thing when we tried to do this as well. In terms of home starts, you can see from 2011, we were a low of 51, and now we're projecting 75. It's tough to project this number, and talking with Misty is because she's one of the builders here. What we did was, there's a huge push near the end of the year. So this may actually turn out to be higher than 75, but we're taking a conservative look on that, and then we're predicting about 85 for next year. That's we're going to talk now about our sewer service fund. That's an overhead picture of our retention ponds that we have. There will be a $1 decrease per month in your sewer service fee. So your sewer service fee now, your monthly fee will be $30. Quick overview. You can see the revenues before depreciation we're expecting to be about $1 million, and net cash flow after payment of debt and capital expenditures to be about $91,000. So leaving projected funds in the sewer of $2.3 million by the end of next year. Some of the projects that we have planned for sewer, there's a hydraulic hammer, a trailer, to replace one of the beds on one of the dump trucks. The two big projects here, collection systems expansions for about $75,000, and then addition to the Catoosa force main. As we know, there's been a lot of building up there, so there's an additional force main that will be required to alleviate some of the burden on the system. So total capital expenditures expected to be about $379,000. Now I'll focus on the Property Owners Association, or the POA fund. We'll go over monthly fees, the cash flow, and as well, again, the capital budget. The POA monthly dues, we are anticipating an increase of about $2 for homes in A-tier lots. So that will be $56 a month. I remind you that 75% of that goes to operations, 25% of that goes to capital projects, and that's important. Just remember that, because when we'll go to the planned projects that we have, you'll see how that comes into effect. Monthly trash fees, that's going from $7 to $8. The additional dollar is going to be put in reserve for an additional truck. We decided that upon talking with the board and the financial advisor, one of the things that is now becoming more prevalent is, well, first of all, we're building more homes in the community, therefore we're going to need an additional truck. But whether that truck be a recycling truck or just a regular garbage truck, that remains to be seen, but we will be needing a truck. So we've decided to reserve that dollar specifically for that purpose. The amenity reserve fees at lot transfer will stay the same. There's no increase in those. So you can see with the increase, it's only a slight decrease, in revenues after. And then you can see here, that's why it's important that 25% go to capital. We have approximately $500,000 scheduled for capital improvements in the POA fund. And in a second, I'll get to those. But you can see also, we're decreasing the amount of funds we need to transfer over to the amenities, and we'll go over that in a second as well. But overall, let me go back. Come on, one more. Overall, we end up with about $2.3 million at the end of 2017. So what are some of the POA capitals? I talked about the $500,000. That's right here. That's for our new public safety fire administration building. So your increase, the 25%, will go here to play some of that. Other things, we are upgrading the cameras for the CCC, the building you're in now. Again, here's your $200,000 in facility building repairs. That, again, is directly correlated to that upland report that I focused on earlier. So that's upgrading our buildings per the report to get them. Then we have $70,000 here for the walking trails. Remember, again, I reiterated at the beginning, one of our key goals here was to increase the amenities, and one of those is the walking trails, which have proved by far extremely popular lately. So total projects for the POA is about $1 million, a little over $1 million for all the projects that we have planned for the POA for 2017. The golf division, we're going to talk about a little bit about rounds, the golf fees, the cash flow again, and capital. It amazed me, and I know all you know, that the weather this year was incredibly wonderful, especially if you're a golfer. Not incredibly good for the soil or anything else, but it was great for if you're a golfer. We are anticipating 146,000 rounds played this year. And as you can see, we've never even gotten close. Well, we've gotten close, but not that close. But really, and this is what really interests me when I actually ran the numbers, and you can see here, that's reason because we've been open 1,426 days. Now I know you're saying there's only 365 days in a year, but this is, every course is counted. So 30 days for Dorchester, 30 days for Druid Hills, 60 days for Heatherhurst, because there's 2 courses, and obviously 30 days for Stonehenge. So you accumulate all the days we've been open, it's 1,426 days, well beyond any of the years that we've had in the past. But the interesting thing is, this one I want to show you, is that no matter how many days, except for 2015, which was an anomaly because of the rain and everything, we are averaging approximately 105 rounds per course per day open. And that average has not changed. So it was very interesting when we actually pulled this, like you see the number of rounds we're expecting, the number of days we've been open, but it all comes down to how many rounds per day per course are we experiencing, and it's about 105. Except for 2015, where it dropped a little bit because of the weather. So what are we going to experience in golf? Well, we are going to experience a $2 increase in the rates. The renter rates will stay the same. And in terms of the annual pass, you'll only have a $2 increase in the cart fee. And the reason behind this really comes up in a minute here, and that is the expected $500,000 in amenity increases that are planned for the golf. So after golf, you'll see the $782,000 excess revenues over expenses, but you also notice the net cash flow is negative 604. And that, again, is due to the projects that are planned. So what are the projects planned? Well, one of the biggest projects, and that is the Stonehenge Bunkers. If any of you have played Stonehenge after a rain, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the inability for the bunkers to drain the water has been a key concern of ours for some time. And we've put this project off now, and we feel now it's time to get it done. Also, the other aspect is the $200,000 in, and I've got to get this right, the Stonehenge Golf Course Turf Management Facility, AKA otherwise known as golf course maintenance. But that building, if you've ever seen it, and I know a couple of our board members and a couple of our financial advisor committee members have gone over there and basically have noticed that it's leaning to one side, getting ready to lean all the way down. So now's the time to replace that. Other things here, I want to point out the Heatherhurst golf carts. One of our plans we have, and this goes to the fact that we listen very much to what people say, and one of the things that people have asked for is those covers on the back of the golf cart to cover your clubs in case of rain or whatever. So all those new golf carts will have those covers on the back of the carts. So that's one of the additions. That's why the golf carts cost a little bit more this year than they have in the past. We're adding that to the golf carts. As well, we still have our resurfacing of cart paths planned and other projects in there. So approximately $1.15 million in amenity spending in 2017. Food and beverage. I'm going to go over revenues per cover, the cash flow, food and beverage capital. So here we have the revenues per cover over the last 4 years, over the last 3 years and the expected next year. So we've roughly, 1354, 1426, 1375. We're really hovering around that $14 mark. So that is what we used in our budget calculations when we figured out the budget, approximately $14 per cover. Again, we've decreased the loss after revenues and expenses to about $250,000. Again, we have projects, capital expenditures about 50, master amenity projects about 150. That leads to a net cash flow of 450,000 negative. Some of the projects we have here, and if any of you have currently seen the food truck that we have, We're not sure if it's going to make it too much longer, so we have it in this year's budget to replace that with a van. And here is the rear porch at Stonehenge, which we have to talk about. Yes, sir?
You said per cover. Is that per person?
Technically, yes. It is, yes. It's per seat in the restaurant. So, in other words, if you have... Yes, sir. So if you have four...
So it's
per person, yeah.
per cover.
Yeah, well, in the restaurant language, it's cover. They consider it covers, but it is persons, yes. We have the Racket Center. Here there would be a $2 per hour per court increase. I'm going to go over the cash flow as well as the capital. Here's our cash flow for tennis revenue, expenses after revenues, probably about $16,000 in the negative. We have the big master amenity project, as you're seeing going on right now, the pickleball courts. We have about and let me actually go to the next slide before we talk about this. But in the end, it's about a $129,000 negative. And I know I did not come up with this name. It's actually the name of the company. Yes, they are called Big Ass Fans. So those will be added to the inside of the tennis courts, as well as the $73,000 remaining on the pickleball courts themselves. So that comes to our 113 that I showed you before. Talk about the marinas a little bit. Rate increases, none. Cash flow and the capital here. Our marinas will make $132,000 after expenses. We're talking about minor capital expenditures of $7,500, which will lead us to a net positive cash flow of $124,000. The marina's capital, the only thing we have for expenses here are 3 pedal boats. Due to the overwhelming demand for our Swan boat, we have decided to add I think it's a duck boat this year. So we'll have the Swan versus the duck races later on. So that is our $75,000 of capital required for the marina. I'd like to talk now about the CCC and Recreation. There'll be minor rate increases. The pool punch cards will be $20 for $45. The preferred pickleball courts will be $4.50 per hour. And then we'll go over the cash flow and, again, the recreation capital. The total loss after revenues and expenses for the CCC is $556,000. We have long-term debt of almost $200,000. And then master amenity projects, which I'll show you in a second. Keep hitting the microphone here, of $192,000. What are those master plan amenity projects? Well, as you all know or don't know, this year we had extreme problem with the liner at Druid Hill Pools. It had been painted over so many times it was starting to bubble, and we need to take it now down to the basically the foundation and rebuild it. So that's about $132,000. While we're replacing that pool liner, we've decided to also replace the Dorchester pool liner, obviously less cost, and already starting the master planning for the amphitheater or the bandstand at Mirror Lake. So that's going to begin in earnest next year. And then there's just some small equipment, furniture and fixtures, and a maintenance vehicle for the facility. So what does it look overall in the total picture of the community? So we're going to look at the consolidated cash flow and obviously very important to most people, the debt service. So here's the consolidated view. Overall, we're looking at cash ending of $4.7 million at the end of 2017. This is a slight decrease of approximately $398,000. Again, I point out with about $1.5 million in master plan projects. That's basically making the community better, making it more modern, and updating areas that really need to be updated. That is also, I point out, and this is very important, about $1 million reduction in debt. That's always something we we like to see when we're reducing that. So you see $3.7 million after revenue and expenses, and these are all really the important things. So that leads us, like I said, to $4.7 million at the end of 2017. So here's the debt service, which I talked about. As you can see, we're reducing principal, $1 million. So at the end of 2017, we've almost hit $3.5 million in debt, which is a severe decrease from, and the important part also to point out is one of that debt will be eliminated in 2018, one debt in 2019, one debt in 2020. So you see in the next 3 years, after 2017, every year we're going to be eliminating one chunk of that debt. So by 2023, all we'll be left with is a small community center debt. So that's very encouraging. We're always glad to see that happen. There was something that we thought y'all would get a lot of benefit out of, and that's really, and it was done by a company called Club Benchmarking, and they looked at, there's two types of club basically. They narrowed it down to two types of clubs. Those that create value and those that cost cut. So what is the definition between these two different types of clubs? Well, let's look at the cost-cutting culture first. One, they have a weak dues engine. Two, they're capital starved. Three, they consider food and beverage as a profit center. Diminishing expectations among the members. This is the biggest one. Focus on the present. They're always focusing on the present. And they're always interested in cost cutting. Those are that's looking at the cost cutting culture. And then let's look at those that want to create value. They have a strong dues engine. They're capital rich, which we fall into that bracket. F&B is an amenity, not a profit center. Rising expectations. And this is really amongst what they pulled from the membership. That when you had a value-creating culture, it's the members that were always expecting something new. And it was very funny, he pointed out one club in particular that said they looked forward and they expected every 2 to 3 years a big project. That was their expectation, and they looked forward to it. They wanted to show off what they did new. Focus on the future. And this, you see the dichotomy between these two. One looks at the present and looks at the present only, and one's always planning for the future. And then cost efficiency, where cost cutting. Now that's a very, some people say those two terms are identical or they mean the same thing. They don't really. It's very much looking at cost, where can we be most efficient as opposed to cutting. And he talked about this as you have to look at it as a gauge. And that gauge, there's a fine line between cost cutting and value creation. And you sort of want to stay in this sort of yellow zone. You prefer obviously to be halfway through, but you want to have a little bit of both, elements of both. But if you get too far on one side, you're in trouble, and obviously sometimes too far on the other side, you spend too much money. So somewhere in here, you have to find a balance between these two aspects, and I think that's very important to keep in mind. So, and then he went on and further said, do we invest or do we not invest? And there's a lot of clubs, and we've seen them around the country, and a lot of them have closed down now. They're in this decay cycle. They have decreased capital income. And again, that's why I told you back when we almost showed the first slide, it's important to focus on that 25% of your dues go into capital. That's going into look toward the future. So that's going to increase capital income rather than decrease it. Lower return on invested capital. Again, restricted investment. You narrow your amenities, you deteriorate your facilities, which then turns to low member satisfaction, lower usage, and then obviously lower income and fewer home. This is a cycle, and if you get caught in this cycle, you just keep going round and round and round until you either decide to break that cycle or you end up closing your doors. And that's why they call it the decay cycle. There's another cycle, on the other hand, which they call the growth cycle, which shows you increased capital income, higher return on that invested capital, and then more amenities, more attractive facilities, increased satisfaction, more income. And that's really the cycle you want to be on, is the growth cycle. Because, yeah, I'm sure you've all heard of, you know, I can't remember the first time I heard this. If you're not growing, you're dying. You know, whether you're growing your experiences or growing whatever. If you're not growing, you're not doing anything. So that's why it's very important. And he really pointed out that it's again, this is a cycle as well. So, you know, you go around more capital, more growth, more investing, all that kind of stuff. It's very important, he pointed out, that it's very hard to go from the decay cycle to the growth cycle. It's very easy to go from the growth cycle to the decay cycle. And that's very important to consider, because it's harder to stay on this, obviously. That's a harder thing to do. But you got to remember, that goes back to focusing on the future as opposed to thinking about the present. So what do we have planned for our master plan improvements? We're talking about some of the projects which are ongoing or just about to start. The fireside renovation, which was completed, in March. We have the Stonehenge Bunkers, which are expected. Bids are due tomorrow afternoon. Bids are due tomorrow afternoon. Construction expected to start right after or right before Thanksgiving, probably right after, and to be completed at the latest by April 1st. We have the Stonehenge covered rear porch, again, to begin almost simultaneously with the bunker project. Bids are going out on that when? Or have they already gone out? They're due back December 2nd. So that will start a little bit after the first project, but both to be completed at the same time. And then there's the pickleball courts, which I have a slide of it actually, but it's already in process and expected to be completed by May 1st. So here's a few photos we put in here. This is what Fireside looked before the renovation. I'm sure you all remember that. And this is what it looks like after. So I told you, for those people who played Stonehenge, this is actually, I think, is this a day or 2 days after a rain?
This was July the 8th this year, our last rain.
Okay, this is our this is our last rain. As he,
I'm glad I got a picture when I did.
Yeah. So this is what one of the bunkers looks like after a rainstorm. And this Billy bunker system is not new. We actually have a hole on Stonehenge which has that. That's taken on the same day on hole number 18, where the Billy bunker system is already in place. So you can see the difference between that and that. So that takes only, you said, what, 5 minutes to prepare to get play?
It would take no time to get.
And this takes, this takes obviously a lot longer to get ready to play. Here is, you've already seen photos of this at the members meeting. This is the back patio at the Stonehenge Clubhouse. And this is the present view, or actually Sunday's view, of the current progress on the pickleball court construction. And what do we have planned going forward? Like I mentioned before in one of the first slides, the public safety, the new administration building both for fire and public safety, which is right now in the planning stages, expected to go forward shortly. The Druid Hill pool liners, again, I mentioned this earlier. This will be completed prior to the summer season when the pools are open for the residents and the guests. Again, I mentioned the leaning tower of golf course maintenance. The Stonehenge Golf Course Turf Care Facility will be started approximately the third quarter of 2017. The Racket Center, we're going to install, those fans in 2017 and planning on renovating the actual tennis facility in 2018. And again, we talked about planning for the new bandstand at Mirror Lake. So what does this look like? Again, I emphasize that you think about the 25% that we're investing